I'm Adam. I'm going to talk about the importance of working with influencers to grow your game. I'll give you a little background on me. I've been, I like to say, in and around games for about 20 years. I started my first gaming website when I was 11, was an N64 reviews and guide site. IGN bought my little website when I was 13, and I went and worked for them for a little while. Built a couple other businesses in the sort of games fan community space, doing all sorts of really interesting stuff. Started a social network called Duckster, grew to several million users. And for the last 5 years, we've been working with game developers and publishers on building their communities and growing their games. We make a couple of different products and services, so to sort of give you some context of what I've been doing, we have community software, forums, wikis, blogs, game launchers, stuff like that. We have a product called GameSite, which is a product that game developers and publishers use to monitor and run their organic, earned, and paid influencer campaigns, which is how I know something about some of this. And then we have this other product called Redshell, which is a Steam marketing attribution piece of tech. So either way, I've worked with lots of games, successful and unsuccessful, and seen a lot of communities get built and I guess some destroyed. I think a little more about me. I have two and a half year olds at home. So if I have two and a half year olds at home. So if I have like peanut butter on my shirt or my socks are a different color, that's probably the reason. So we'll chat about influencer marketing. So really the point of this talk is for me to go over a couple things. Influencers, what are they? Why should you care? Why they should be, if you're building a game or shipping a game, why it's the thing you should know about and care about. Maybe some common misconceptions, some things maybe you've heard that aren't true that you should probably know. And I'm going to go through some pretty specific tactical things on what I would say how to do it right and how to make sure that you're being effective. So if you're actually in the weeds, hopefully this stuff is interesting to you. So what are influencers? I think this is part of the sort of the intro is that might mean something to different people, and it means a whole bunch of stuff to us. There isn't sort of a one catch-all. I think for better or worse, when someone says, "Oh yeah, we worked with these great influencers for our game," that means a bunch of different things. So let's get a little complex. I slice it three different ways. One is this way right here, which is celebrities, brand, and community. So celebrities are, obviously in the non-gaming context, you're thinking of people like Kim Kardashian, who are famous for being famous. In gaming, we have a lot of similar people. If you're looking at like the top 10 YouTubers or Twitch streamers, they're most likely famous for being famous at this point. They're PewDiePie, they're Total Biscuit. They're not focused on a specific genre, a specific type of game. They are just sort of famous people. The next, which, the word brand is maybe a little confusing. That's really when we think about something like an esports team where they might have a really specific genre, specific thing that they're going to have a lot of influence over, but maybe very little influence over anything else. And then community is when we're talking about maybe it's a guild, maybe it's a small group of people that do meetups together, small different people that have a really tight-knit community that they might have a ton of influence over that community and maybe nothing else. So I think that's one big way we like to slice influencers. We're talking about influencer marketing. We then slice it another way, which is, I guess, again, in three, triangles, I guess, not quartiles. We slice it three different ways, which would be organic, earned, and paid. Paid's like the most obvious. Here, Mr. PewDiePie, here's $50,000. Please play my game and tell people it's great. That's paid influencer marketing. We've got earned, which is what Luke probably does a great job of, shout out, which is you're going directly to streamers. Maybe they're coming to you. You're building that relationship yourself, that they are sort of linked to your brand because of work you've done. And then there's organic, which are someone maybe picked up your game. You've never talked to them. You've never heard of them. They've never talked to you. And they're creating content and influencing for your game. So I think as sort of an outset, it's kind of important to, at least this is how I like to think about and talk about influencers. And so throughout the rest of the talk, I think those will get referenced back. So where are influencers? Well, they're everywhere. I think for the purposes of what we talk about and for games, there's really only two that matter, and they're in the top left corner. There's a study SuperData came out with in the last week that showed how many people were basically watching game-related content. They called it gaming media content. 465 million people on a monthly basis are watching gaming media content, which is more than Hulu, Netflix, ESPN, HBO all combined. So what the study basically said was there are more people watching people playing games than watching TV and sports on the internet, which is for a lot of people, hopefully not in this room, kind of hard to wrap your head around. If you take that down a level, 95+% of that is happening in the top two logos up there. My guess is 10 years, if I'm giving a talk like this, that'll change. I don't know that those two things will be here 10 years from now. Maybe it'll be Beam, maybe it'll be Facebook Live. There's a constant change and constant influx. And I think that so much of that has come with the empowerment of the individual. As an influencer, people come to watch, and I guess we'll sort of see. Famously, PewDiePie is now kind of moving a lot of his content from YouTube to Twitch. We'll see if all of his people follow him, and we'll see if similar things going forward. So now this is kind of the important part. Why do I care? Great, that's all cool, but why should I care about influencers? Why are they important to me in my game? Well, if you're a game developer, you have a finite marketing budget, I would imagine, and you have to figure out the best way to spend it. Where are you going to spend it? Are you going to spend it on Facebook ads? Are you going to spend it on TV commercials? There's a million places to spend it. Well, the overwhelming research that has come out in really the last 3 years, but so much of it recently, is showing the ROI for influencers is tremendous. So, this particular study compared traditional banner digital advertising to influencer marketing and had an 11 times higher ROI. I saw a study last week that showed for every $1 brands are putting into influencer marketing, they're seeing $5 in sales back. I think sort of something we saw really recently, which was a pretty large game launch that compared all of their spend on influencer marketing, Twitch streaming, YouTube videos, and they compared that to ads on IGN, Curse, display advertising. And they found two things that I think were super interesting. One was the click-through rate. So someone watched the Twitch stream or they saw the IGN ad, the percent of people that actually decided to check out the game was 100 times higher on Twitch than it was on IGN. And then I think maybe the most important thing, which is they all land on the same thing. They all go to a Steam page. They hit that Steam page, the actual download rate was 10 times higher from folks that came in through an influencer branded sort of video or live stream. So conversion rates unbelievably high. Sort of not rocket surgery. Someone's talking to you about a game. They're showing you the game. You're making the decision, maybe I'll go check it out. You're much more likely to actually play the game than if you happen to get distracted and click a banner link on a site. But nonetheless, the data is kind of overwhelming. And I think a lot of this has to do with the change in consumer behavior. I don't know about all of you, but when I was sort of growing up, the way I decided which games to play was I would see a commercial and I would see a in cap at Best Buy or GameStop or FuncoLand, I guess for me. And that was sort of how I made my decisions. Maybe I read a review on IGN, maybe I read in a magazine. That was kind of the spectrum I had to decide which games I was going to play. Now, I'll go watch a Twitch stream or I'll watch a YouTube video of the game before I play it. I'll get a sense of, does this actually look fun? I've kind of always hated the notion that you make this trailer for your game that contains very little content of the actual game and instead just really other fun, cool looking stuff. The idea of actually just watching people play the game gives you a better sense for what the game is. There's been a bunch of research in the last year about purchase decisions and how gamers make purchase decisions. This study, which was by McKinsey, showed that 40% of people were more likely to buy a product after watching an influencer play. I think a more interesting stat that I saw really recently from Twitch was the percent of people who actually would not buy a game unless they've watched it streamed on Twitch. So it's not only a factor, it's becoming a determinative factor. And I think sort of to follow up with some of that, and this is, I guess, back to the same Twitch study. Luke, some of your games might have been a part of this study where they talked about mid-tier influencers affecting game sales, and so Twitch looked at a handful of games, and they were trying to do some attribution of who actually played the game after watching a Twitch stream. And they found for some games that just about half of all the people who purchased the game from any source anywhere bought it after watching a stream of the game. So obviously back out if half of those people, half of your overall sales are coming after someone watches a Twitch stream. It's sort of pretty important to the overall success of the game. I think the for anyone who has been involved in any free-to-play games or even anything with sort of long-tail monetization on DLC, we've seen some crazy stats on retention, length of play, engagement, sort of quality of play and happiness from folks who have ended up coming into a game after watching sort of an influencer play. Also super important. So maybe I should have done this earlier. Why do influencers work? Why is it important? Well, I think there's a few things. The authenticity is obviously a huge key, and so much of that comes from the format. When you're watching someone, they're talking to you, you're listening. The idea of sort of lying and being deceptive, it's hard to do. It's hard to have a relationship with someone where you're speaking with them for hours. So many streamers we work with, they're streaming 4 to 8 hours a day, every day of the week, and people are watching that. It's hard. You have this really intimate relationship that I think if you've never been on the other end, it's maybe hard to understand, but it's like a person you know in real life. It's someone that you see every day. So when a recommendation comes in, or maybe even absent recommendation, even just something you're exposed to, as an end user, you're more likely to give it a try because it's someone you have this actual connection with. I think the form of content is engaging. I think back to kind of that SuperData study, more game content is being watched on the internet than anything else. So the people have spoken and have said, this is how we want to spend our time. We want to watch streams and we want to watch videos. And so the content is where the eyeballs are going. So it's naturally, we've all, as the people, decided it's more effective for us. And I think the big thing that my business focuses on a lot is figuring out how you find the right fit, right? How when one streamer might stream a game and another streamer stream a game, and one might be massively successful and their audience might love it, and the other person might hate it and their audience says this is the worst game ever. How do you find that fit is massively important. I think that's part of the authenticity of what so many streamers do, which is they build their own communities and micro communities of their fans. So I think this is maybe a little bit obvious after some of the things we've gone through, but why is it important, I guess, in the context of other things you could be doing and other places you could spend your money? Well, TV advertising is going away. Saw a great study in the last week where they asked people where they preferred to watch their TV, on a TV, on a computer, or on their phone. They did this study about 5 years ago, and then they did it again in the last week. Or I guess they published the results in the last week. And they found that 5 years ago, I think it was 74% of people said, I like to watch my TV on my TV. And now 23% of people prefer to watch their TV on their TV. They're watching it on their 50+% on their PC, and then the other 20 whatever percent on their phone. So we're obviously seeing a shift away from cable television subscriptions. Between 40 and 50% of daily active Twitch users don't have cable subscriptions, so that sort of is going away. So if you're thinking, I know I'll get my game in front of a bunch of people by running a bunch of commercials, well, that's less likely to be true today, and it's really less likely to be true in the future. The next most obvious thing is typical digital advertising, whether you're talking pre-roll videos on YouTube, banner display ads on Curse and IGN. I mean, we sort of all have heard this, like gamers use ad blockers. I think I've seen stats everywhere between 40 and 80%. I don't know how many of those I actually believe, but let's just call it 50, somewhere around half of the, call it PC core gamers, aren't seeing pre-roll ads on YouTube, and they're not seeing pre-roll ads on Twitch. They're not seeing the banner ads on Twitch. So a lot of the I guess, traditional ways we're used to getting in front of gamers just don't work. They're not seeing it. They're seeing a black box or like a unicorn or whatever sort of their ad blocker puts in instead. So those sort of long-standing ways that we market to gamers, they work less well today than they did a year ago, and they're going to work worse tomorrow. So now kind of the big question is, like, should you be doing influencer marketing? Is this a thing you should think about or care about? I mean, a couple of the common objections are, I don't have a lot of money. I don't have that big of a budget. Maybe what percent of my budget should focus on this? Maybe I'm not a AAA game. I can't do it or whatever. So I mean, there's a million success stories. I think one of the more interesting ones is this Binding of Isaac story where, so the story goes, the game launches, they're doing like 200 downloads a day. It sort of tails off, and they start doing about 150 sales of the game a day organically. They're not spending any money. They're 150 people buy the game every day. That happens for 5 or 6 months. Somewhere around 6 months into the game being out, they start seeing downloads go up. Starts going from 150, 300, 500, 1,000, up to like 1,500 downloads a day. The developer's like blown away, like, what's happening? I didn't do anything. I didn't discount my game. It's not on sale. I'm not really doing anything that should cause my game to be massively successful today when it wasn't last week. Well, so they obviously did a little bit of research and found that the YouTubers started picking up the game and creating Let's Play videos. And it started with a couple people, and then this sort of group picked it up, and then it became this snowball momentum where they were getting something like 1,000 YouTube videos a day, mostly of the Let's Play variety, playing their game. And of course, that took the game from middling sales to great sales. The developer now sort of focuses on YouTubers on every additional game they release. I wouldn't suggest that should be everyone's strategy, since it wasn't really a strategy. It was kind of dumb luck to a great extent, and now it's been a great success story. But it sort of shows that even with no money and no effort, it can still be the number one source of sales for a game. I think we've seen all sorts of great success stories where there's a little bit more effort, but sort of the same phenomenon where it hits a community in the right way. It's a particularly good fit for what they like to do, and they have a ton of success. So now I've got 5 minutes left. Now I will get to some like particularly tactical tips and tricks and like specific things that I would recommend we focus on. So first thing is making your game accessible. So if you want influencers to find your game, play your game, stream your game, whatever, you need to be able to get it. So a couple of super obvious things. You have to add your game to Twitch. Games don't just like magically appear on Twitch. They're not taggable on Twitch unless they're added to the Giant Bomb database. It's kind of a pain in the ass. We have a blog post on our website if someone's interested in that, on how to do it. But making your game actually discoverable and taggable on Twitch is a hugely important thing. I think the next thing is making your access to your game available to influencers. So we recommend to pretty much everyone, you don't just have a press kit, have wherever your press kit is, have another page for influencers, an influencer kit, and there's different assets and different art that you're going to want to provide. Recommend having an email, like set up an email alias, streamers at, creators at, whatever, to let people get in contact with you directly. They're not, most YouTubers aren't the press, so treating them as the press is kind of a weird thing. So treat them what they actually are, and create a place for them to come and find you and contact you. Have some way of distributing keys and making it possible for someone who wants to do a review of your game to get a key from you, to validate that they're a real person and they're not just going to sell it on G2A. That's pretty important. But having some pipes where I feel as a streamer, a content creator, that I have access to the game and I can get a copy of it if that's something that you want to provide. So now some kind of like places to go and things to use. So if you're really going to invest in influencer marketing, you obviously want to know it's successful. So there are really kind of three things that you should be doing. You should be figuring out what the reach is and where people are playing your game, and if people are, and how many people are watching it. So there's a bunch of websites I've listed here there's plenty of others that'll sort of show you who's streaming your game, who's making YouTube videos for your game, how many people watch them, how many subscribers they have, all sorts of stuff like that. Just knowing what's going on, I think that's a great place to start to find out if it's a thing worth investing in. Being able to track interactions, so how many people are clicking on links, how many people are coming to my Steam page from Twitch, YouTube. Those are all important things to track. I think, unfortunately, on social, the best thing is really to use a bit.ly link that's trackable, or hashtags, which aren't the best, but they do work. And then if you're trying to actually attribute installs, there's products for mobile, web, and Steam games. So this is maybe something you've heard of, the FTC and all these scary stories. There's a bunch that came out maybe 2 days ago that the FTC was cracking down on influencers on Instagram, and they're like people making makeup videos and stuff. So not super relevant to anything that happens in games, but it's all technically the same thing. So I'll keep this super simple. The FTC has rules on native advertising, which is someone in the stream of what they're already doing is trying to pitch a product, sell your product, or promote a product. If that's happening, they have to disclose it. The law is like, you can make it complicated, but it has to be clear and conspicuous, which means people watching it have to understand that person's getting paid, and it's not just sort of on their own accord they're doing this. So the obvious ways to do it is they can say, this is paid, this is promotional. You can put a sponsored bracket on your video. You can put hashtag ad. Those are probably all things you've seen. One of the most important things that hopefully you leave here today knowing is if you give someone a key to your game, that is the same thing as paying them money, at least in the FTC's eyes. Any sort of actual compensation that someone would have otherwise had to pay for it puts you under sort of the FTC rules on native advertising. So it's something that you should watch. If you're sending away a bunch of free keys, make sure that the people who are using them know that they need to disclose that they got the key for free. And that's all they have to say. They can say, hey, the developer sent me this key and check out this review of the game. Whether they say they love it or hate it doesn't make any difference, but they need to sort of make it clear to their fans that it was a thing that they were given. So here's some examples of the ways people do it. EA has these really fancy overlays that they give people that on every stream it says supported by EA. There's much simpler ways to do that. Again, bracket sponsored is, or I guess paren sponsored, both work. Hashtag ad. So overall, it's important to make sure that this stuff is disclosed. The FTC has been cracking down, as they probably should be. I think that we have come to a place where there is like legitimately deceptive advertising. I've seen big companies that send emails to people that say, please stream my game. Here's a key, and make sure not to tell anyone I did this, that I give this to you. It's like there are people trying to be deceptive, and that's probably not something the rest of us want. So references, that's it. That's all I got. I'm Adam. You can follow me on the internet or email me. I'll be around if people have specific questions.
If you have a question right now, I can do one or two questions very quickly. Anybody have any?
Weird. I'm dressed the same as I am in that picture. It's super weird. No headphones.
So where are you finding all of these studies?
I will send them all to you if you want to see the list of references. I don't know that I want to detail them.
Oh, absolutely.
But I'll shoot you the deck with all the links.
I've got a quick question, Adam, if I may.
Yeah.
You talk about influencers and you talk about sending your game to them, and you talked about how to measure influence. But even those sites and tools are very subjective and constantly changing. Do you have any tips for a small game developer to try to find a way to pre-qualify, is this self-identified influencer or the person asking me for a free game? How do I get a sense of whether I'm making a good investment by sending them either a free game or a key or whatever the case is? Is there anything that they can do at a grassroots level to pre-qualify what might be or might not be an influencer?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and I don't know that there is an answer, because I think the answer is different for everyone, and who is a good fit for you is not a good fit for the guy down the street. Someone who says, I have 1 million followers, give me $500. That might be worth $10,000. That might be worth $0. So I think that's really hard to do right now. I think it's one of probably the biggest issues in the industry is the transparency is so low that it's often hard to find. So I think from a grassroots level, it's diligent. It's going back and looking at their history, and are they talking about the kind of things that the people who are interested in my game might care about? Are they playing games of the same, genre or milieu or whatever? It takes work. It takes a lot of work and a lot of time, and even then, it's not going to be perfect. We have machine learning processes trying to figure that out and match games with people, and it gets it wrong. So I don't know how a person's going to do it perfectly. One day, maybe.
Thank you very much, Adam.
Thank you.
I appreciate your time. Thank you.